that travelers are aware of the latest changes in customs regulations. In a timely and recent update, government announced the increase of the personal traveler allowance for non-commercial goods imported from 1,000 malangeni to 10,000 malangeni. This move is expected to streamline border processes, enhance compliance and make cross-border movement smoother for everyone. To help us understand what this means for travelers and for the country, of course, on the program today, we'll be joined by Director of Customs Technical, Precious Chawia, and Marketing and Communications Manager, Nduduzo Dlamini, right here on the program. But first, we begin by looking at some of our business stories this afternoon. In our business story, 7 companies have been granted Authorized Economic Operator AEO status by the Eswatini Revenue Services, bringing the total number to 20. According to Commissioner General Brightwell Ngambule, businesses with Authorized Economic Operator status receive benefits such as faster clearance times, fewer inspections, and a more streamlined customs process, which can reduce costs and improve efficiency. The ceremony to confer these companies was held at the services headquarters in Eswatini.
Today we welcome a new cohort of AEOs into this executive community. Conco Limited, Sailor and Freight Pty Limited, DHL Pty Limited, Eswatini Post and Telecommunications, Grunrod, Southern Star Logistics, and Lactalis Eswatini Pty Limited. To the leadership and staff of these companies, accept my sincere congratulations. By stepping forward and meeting the rigorous requirements of the AEO program, you've signaled that compliance, security and transparency are not just tick box exercises, but strategic priorities to your operations. You're setting the standards for how trade should work in Eswatini.
Commissioner General of the Eswatini Revenue Service, Brightwell Ngambule, shares the benefits of the Authorized Economic Operator accreditation.
Traders get to benefit, from going through express lanes and priority processing at the border, reduced inspections, priority treatments whenever inspections are required, including choosing the most convenient examination point, direct access to ERS information and dedicated support, ensuring quicker resolution of issues, simplified procedures and lower administrative burdens that reduce compliance costs. In essence, being an AEO is comparable to holding a diplomatic passport in the trade environment. Your compliance record unlocks speed, privilege, and predictability at the border.
Co-chair of the National Trade Facilitation Committee, who is also Business Eswatini's Chief Executive, Inathi Dlamini, says the Authorized Economic Operator program is critical for foreign direct investment.
Efficient border processes are a competitive advantage. Every saved hour, every predictable clearance process, every risk-based intervention translates into lower costs, stronger balance sheets, and greater confidence to invest.
Some of the companies accredited had this to say.
For us, cross-border trade would be made easier. So we look forward to that VIP status as Conco, and we look forward really to reaping the benefits and to see our goods, move across borders, both in the country and out of the country in the shortest time possible, because for us, time is of the essence.
In the past, we used to see our trucks being detained at the border a lot, like 3 out of 5 days a week. And when we started being assessed for the AEO accreditation, we saw that our trucks were not detained anymore. It hardly ever happens anymore. So we have already started seeing the benefits. So further benefits that we expect Expect to see now is the express counter at the border.
The Commissioner General Brightwell Nkambule says the Authorized Economic Operator Program is not only about faster clearance or fewer inspections, but it is about shaping a trade environment that is secure, transparent, predictable, where compliance is rewarded, trust is strengthened, and prosperity is shared. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Ezulwini.
The Eswatini Competition Commission is working with various partners to create a platform that will strengthen collaboration among public sector organizations involved in consumer protection. The Advocacy and Communications Manager says that if each organization is providing consumers with critical information, they should join forces so that consumers receive comprehensive and coordinated knowledge across all sectors.
We are bringing together stakeholders that are working in the public sector organizations that are working in the consumer protection space. Because as you will know that there are a number of organizations that are looking at consumer issues like Central Bank Ombudsman, the Ombudsman of Financial Services in the non-banking financial sector. And then as a competition commission, we look generically across the economy in terms of consumer protection issues. So this is a first of its kind meeting whereby we are bringing together all of these consumer protection agencies under one room to discuss how best to collaborate and the emerging issues and how to deal with challenges as they come and how to refer, just sharing of knowledge, and also discussing each other's mandate so that we are clear as to who is responsible for what and how best to support each other. So that is the essence of today's meeting, and we are looking forward to a more collaborative approach going forward, because we all work on consumer protection issues, and it's important that we work together. For instance, if we go to Tinkulda centers to sensitize the public about consumer protection issues, let us go together. Let there be a one-stop shop to getting information that relates to consumer protection, so that consumers are able to go to Central Bank Ombudsman, ISWASA, Competition Commission, Ombudsman of Financial Services, Construction Industry Council, ESCCOM in one at the same time. Under one room.
And you're up to date with some of the latest in business this afternoon. We sit down with the ERS immediately after this.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. Today on our Text Talk segment, we are focusing on an important update that affects personal travelers returning to Eswatini. Government has approved a change to the personal allowance for non-commercial goods imported as accompanied baggage. This update now comes at a crucial time as we approach the festive season. The change aims to make travel smoother, faster and fully compliant. Joining me in studio to unpack these changes are Director of Customs Technical, Precious Chawuya, and Marketing and Communications Manager, Nduduzo Dlamini. Welcome to the program to you both, actually.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's get to it. I'll start with you, Precious. So what is personal traveler allowance and what has changed really since government's announcement?
So Good afternoon to the viewers. Thank you, Notile, for the question. The personal traveler allowance is actually a concession that is granted to an individual when that person returns from Eswatini having purchased personal goods, so goods that are not going to be put to any commercial use. So what this allowance has or does, it has the effect of reducing the taxable amount on which we will collect the import VAT. So when we apply the allowance, it basically means that you will pay import VAT at a price that is lower than what you paid when purchasing the goods. So as you have indicated that with the introduction of this change by government, we are now seeing a very positive impact on our clients who are importing goods for personal use, in that the allowance which we are currently applying is only 1,000 emalangeni. But now this has been increased from that 1,000 to 10,000 per traveler. We just want to emphasize that this is for goods that will be used for personal use. And as the minister indicated, this change takes effect on Friday, 28th November going forward. So non-commercial items which have been bought by a personal traveler, and that traveler ought to be bringing these goods into the country by themselves, this is when we are going to let them enjoy the allowance of 10,000 on the goods they have purchased.
All right, I like that you're putting emphasis on how this is simply for personal goods. I think a lot of us could actually use that clarity. Nduduzo, allow me to come to you. How does this new allowance work, in practice for travelers returning from South Africa into the kingdom?
Thanks, Notsile, and good afternoon to you and the viewers. The process is quite simple. The first thing is just to highlight around that, I think, is to for our personal travelers to know that we've increased it to 10,000. And then the second thing, as Precious has highlighted, is to mention that this is just only for personal use, not for resale. And then secondly, what we also expect from them is that when they come back, they're still required to declare. So which means they still need to get those VAT registered suppliers as they are doing those purchases when they come back in country.
Right.
Yeah.
Precious, my next one is for you. What are the conditions that a traveler must meet to qualify for this allowance? Are there any specifics?
So, Notile, I think the critical one, which we have indicated already, is the fact that the goods are for personal use. So that is the first condition we are looking at. And then when we say it's accompanied baggage, what we basically mean there is that the person who is bringing in the goods is the one who owns them. So if I send a courier to collect goods on my behalf, then they can't apply the personal allowance because it's no longer accompanied, it's agency facilitated. So those are the key conditions. So Nduduzo mentioned the fact that we expect a declaration. And yes, indeed, when you submit a customs declaration, it always has to be supported by information or documentation which validates the information that you are declaring. So one other condition is the submission of the relevant documents. So we just want to make an example here so that we also further outline how this personal allowance really applies the conditions. So when you look at the instrument that has been issued in terms of effecting this change, it mentions that for individuals who will buy goods from vendors who are registered for VAT in South Africa, those individuals only have the personal allowance of 250 emalangeni. So they cannot apply the allowance of 10,000. So we need them to then follow the conditions of collecting the appropriate tax invoice and bringing in any other supporting document that is required to validate the declaration. However, in the event then that maybe they missed something in checking the qualification criteria of this particular invoice, we will then say, instead of making this, of insisting that you are to use the VAT refund system, we can then allow you to use the personal allowance of 10,000. But we just want to amplify the fact that you need to bring your documents having checked them. So this is one other condition to say documentation which supports the declaration always has to be submitted to customs.
If you could just share examples, perhaps, what are some of these relevant documentations that you speak of?
So let's talk about a person buying from a VAT-registered vendor. They should come with a tax invoice. So we know that some business enterprises will issue with what they call a commercial invoice or a till slip. So this one is not a tax invoice. So if the person is saying, I am registered for VAT, and they charge you VAT in South Africa, they need to give you a tax invoice. And then you have bought maybe an electrical appliance that costs above 10,000. So your invoice also, in addition to that tax invoice, you bring us proof of payment for that amount that corresponds to what the invoice shows. So those are some of the supporting documents we are looking for.
So what should travelers keep in mind with regards to VAT invoices? You've touched on documents and the Sekulula VAT Easy.
Thank you, Notsile, for touching on that. I think we've already said, bring your tax invoices, check that they qualify. We have information on our website which shows what we are looking for. What are the features of a valid tax invoice? So I'll make an example. If you buy goods that are above 5,000, the tax invoice has to indicate the name, my name as the person who is buying. So not only just the name of the supplier, but also the name and full address of the person who is buying. So that's critical. And then if it's above 10,000, you accompany it with the proof of payment. So Segulula works like that. And then what we are saying is that the allowance now brings a benefit in that if the claim is submitted, which basically means we are not going to get the VAT that was paid in South Africa on this one, we are not going to call up on the individual that imported to say, hey, your invoice was rejected, so you now have a liability. We'll simply apply the personal allowance and that declaration is finalized like that.
Very much. Duduzo, my next one's for you. What is the broader impact of this adjustment really, and how does it benefit the country?
Okay, thanks. There are several benefits to this allowance. So firstly, it gives full, honest and declarations to be correct. It also improves our customs import data. And then secondly, it also assists us as a country in terms of our SACCO receipts, which we share with South Africa, which will also contribute to our revenue. And then lastly, it also simplifies the process for travelers as they go out to the country and simplifying the process of declaring.
All right.
Yeah.
Precious, allow me to hand you a bonus one. So when giving the update, the Minister of Finance, actually, I think, even with the ERS, there's always emphasis on voluntary disclosure or, declaration of goods. How does accurate declaration of personal goods contribute to national revenue collection?
It has a huge impact. I think the Minister was also explaining it in his update, that whatever it is that is declared at the border, the first thing that will happen is that we are collecting correct statistics on what type of goods are being traded. So for policy-making purposes, this information is critical because it indicates what Eswatini are consuming. But then there is that VAT element, which says we are then collecting 15%. And if you had bought from a VAT-registered vendor, through Segulula, you give us the invoice, and then we go and claim from South Africa, and that money comes into Eswatini. And then over and above that, as we make these declarations, we are contributing to the overall pool of revenue for SACCO, which periodically is then allocated or distributed among the member states. So that distribution has a formula. Part of the formula will speak to how much trade occurred between the member states. So every time we declare, we are putting in information that is going to be used to calculate what revenue is due to Eswatini. So we find that it is really essential for everyone to fully declare.
Thank you very much, Precious and Dutuzo. I'd like for you to wrap it up as your key message as the ERS with regards to the importance of the declaration process, really.
Thanks, Notsile. It's just a reminder as we're going to Black Friday, the festive season. We're encouraging all Maswati to declare their goods. Should you also require any information, we are available on our pages on Facebook and LinkedIn. They can get us at Eswatini Revenue Services, or they can also WhatsApp us at 7606 3735, or they can also write us on email at info@ers. .org.z.
Dutuzo, Precious, thank you both for your time. That was Precious Chawea, Director of Customs Technical at the ERS, and Dutuzo Dlamini, who is the Marketing and Communications Manager at ERS. And we're discussing the recent changes with regards to travel allowance update, update from 1,000 Malangini to 10,000 Malangini. It is the festive season. You want to shop, but also be sure to declare whatever goods you have coming into the country. Actually, our market analysis coming up after this.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you'll go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.z. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart.
Welcome back. We've come now to the market analysis segment of the show, and our in-house economist, Anele Sibia, joins us virtually. Good afternoon, Mr. Sibia. Thank you so much for your time. The fourth trading day of the week. How are markets behaving?
Thank you, Notsile. Good afternoon to you and also to the viewer. So what we're seeing in markets today is a bit of mixed reactions, with the US showing some signs of, positive gains, trying to recoup those gains, the losses that we saw as of last week. But it still remains a bit weaker. When you look at the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite Index, you can see that in as much as we're seeing some growth rebounding into that sector, but it still remains below the 24,000 mark, which had been an average for the past 2 weeks. So now it shows that even though the markets are expecting the interest rates to come down in December, but the valuation fears remain within the tech sector, more especially those that are leaning more towards AI. But if you look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500, you can see that those markets, those indices are now back at those higher levels of last week. So it shows that they've recouped all of those losses. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gaining some 314 points. Then there's S&P 500 gaining some 46 points there. So you can see that the Standard & Poor and the Dow Jones Industrial Averages do track a lot of those blue chip stocks, which are more recession proof, and there's those consumer stocks which are mostly expected to gain from those from that interest rate cut coming next week or coming in December, when we see that additional liquidity being infused into the markets. And then when you move on to Europe, the FTSE 100 is actually a bit higher today, but we've seen it an intraday trade losing some 17 points to sit at $9,673 there. That's largely because markets are still mulling over Chancellor Reeve's budgets, the Chancellor of the Exchequer's budget. That we can see that it comes with a proposal to increase taxes by 26 billion within the UK economy, and we can see taxes that are being targeted towards new housing and quite a lot of taxes, even though on welfare and retirement. So markets are just mulling over that and trying to figure out what the long-term impact of that is going to be. But it does show that it is a budget for business. Hence, you can see the FTSE 100 moving up to that 9,600 mark again. But still, analysts are looking through that budget and see while we start trying to gauge the likely impact of that overall on the economy. And then in Germany, there you can see that some consumer sentiment is returning. Germany has gained some 34 points today in Frankfurt. Paris is back on that 8,000 mark. We can see that those luxury consumer commodities are actually doing quite well there for Paris. Remember, we're now in the festive season, so it's a shopping galore, and those luxury retailers, they tend to do well right around this time, and we do expect Paris to stay above the 8,000 mark during this period. Jumping over to Asia, the Nikkei there's back on that 50,000 mark, but not yet back on that 51,000 mark, but we're back above the 50,000 mark, gaining some 600 points today, largely driven by that good political stability that we're seeing coming out of Japan, and also the fact that we've seen, the likes of Lenovo and Toshiba within the Japanese economy really just ramping up their investment. So that shows that the tech space in Japan still has ways to go. And then move on to Hong Kong and Shanghai, you can see that there is still a bit of movement. But what we are mostly focusing on right now is the Shanghai Composite Index struggling to get back to that 4,000 mark. But we are hearing a lot of talks around some stimulus that are going to come in to rescue the Chinese economy. But more worrying is the real estate sector there. I mean, that sector has been in a state of crisis for over, I think, 3 years now. And it seems no matter the stimulus that you bring into the market, it tends not to push or nudge the real estate sector towards the right direction within the mainland. And then when you come into South Africa, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange All-Share Index remains at that 110,000 mark in today's trade, losing some 800 points today. So that's largely due to the fact that you can see a bit of pullback on the gold price due to that profit taking. So a lot of the sentiments within the Johannesburg Stock Exchange are largely driven by the price of gold and other precious metals there. So gold is actually come down a bit, losing some 16 points today due to that profit taking, and oil remains relatively flat there at that $62 per barrel, largely due to those supplier capacity, supply over capacity there and demand playing that interplay there. And then when you come into the exchange rate, you can say that the Lilangeni is relatively strong against the euro today, but we remain relatively weak against the USD and the Japanese yen, but it's still on that very strong footing on 17.15 against the dollar and 9.11 against the Japanese yen. Thank you, Notile.
Thank you very much, Sanele, for that insightful analysis. That was our in-house economist, Sanele Sibia, sharing insights on what is shaping markets today. This has been Market View ERS Tech